Border debate still holding up. Summer recess on Capitol Hill right now. The focus of a last-minute GOP House meeting this morning. Senior Republican leadership aides telling NBC News they expect something to get passed today. Of course, we don't know what that something will end up being. Also held up, a bipartisan trip to the border led by Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Democratic Congressman Steny Hoyer of Maryland to see the crisis firsthand away from the Beltway. Joining me now is one of those congressmen who expected to be on this trip this morning. He's been there a lot before. Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Luis Gutierrez. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Jose.
Can you sift through all the madness and tell us what's going on and what hasn't been able to happen yet?
Well, I think part of it you just saw in the previous interview with Congresswoman Blackburn. She says UACs, UACs, UACs. I think she said it 3 or 4 times. Why does it just say children? Then she says, other than Mexicans, why don't you just say children? Oh, we're going to give them money so that we can expedite the removal and deportation of the, not UACs, of the children. That is really the problem that the Republican Party has, because what Congressman Blackburn didn't discuss is that part of the proposal is her proposal that she wrote yesterday, but now might have been rewritten by Senator Cruz, because he probably took the pen and said, no, Marcia, that's not strong enough and not mean enough. She has a proposal that would defund, I don't know how she defunds it, DACA, that is the permits that have been given, the work authorizations that have been given to young immigrants in this country, that Obama, to 700,000 undocumented young people who we have documented. She wants to make them undocumented through her actions so they don't get to renew them. And she wants to unfund it. But the problem is, the way the program gets funded is with the $475 that the young immigrants pay to join the program. So that's what they're not talking. So I think the real fundamental problem that the Republicans has is how do we get meaner? How do we get nastier with immigrants so that we can take a smaller group, now apparently led by Senator Cruz? I mean, maybe he's going to be the next Speaker of the House. You know, you don't have to be a member of the House to be the Speaker. Maybe they'll just elect him Speaker, because it's quite clear that Mr. Boehner has no control over this conference. Look, they are the majority party. They called the vote. It was their legislation. They didn't have the votes. And Democrats, I am proud, said yesterday, we will not cooperate if what you are going to do is undermine fundamental rights and fundamental achievements that we've had for our immigrant community, and you're not going to protect the children.
Congressman, can you explain this other thing to me? You were part of a bipartisan group in the House working for years. This is not waiting until 5 minutes before you guys go on recess. You guys have been working on this for years. And then that spirit, those agreements, that wording that you all had already disappeared. It was blown up all of a sudden. What happened? Why? What's going on in the House? You guys can't seem to agree on anything, even after working on things for years.
Wow. You know, Jose, great question. Because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of immediately after November of 2012, when the Republicans said, you know what? We need to find a better way to communicate with immigrants and the Latino community. We have just lost it in the last 2 presidential elections. Over 70% of the Latino, they were key and fundamental to the Democratic victory. We need to do better outreach, and they did. Paul Ryan did. So many other members of the Republican caucus did, and we began to work together. But unfortunately, for the Republican conference, they forgot. But they are going to be quickly reminded. It's almost as though there's amnesia, but they are going to be quickly reminded in 2014, but moreover in 2016 during the next presidential election, because, Jose, you can't go from saying, I want to build new bridges and new communications, and I was ready and part of that process, to then demonizing children that arrive at our borders. You've heard, this is an invasion. Right? There are throngs of them coming to our border. Tattoo, gang banging, disease-ridden criminals bringing drugs and are going to cause havoc on our society. They are children. And yet this is what, and they can't take that back. So I would hope that Jose, fundamentally, there are dozens of Republican members of the Republican who would vote with us. But apparently their voices are being shut out by people who are just louder and meaner in their conference, and that's where they're moving. So where are they moving today?
Well,
they're going to move to be meaner to immigrants in order to bring their conference together.
Well, maybe it's going to go from UAC to MIA as far as responsibility with the American people. Congressman Gutierrez, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jose.
And before we go to